Alright, and welcome to Mama Sass's Life Unfiltered. And shall I say, as I always do, it's raw, it's real, it's uncut, and it's unapologetic. You're not going to get a polished podcast on Mama Sass's Life Unfiltered. You're going to get my life put out to you with the way that it was, or the way that I see it, in a real, raw, honest version. I'm not sugarcoating nothing over here. I'm not going to say that, things just to make other people happy. This is where I get to talk about every single thing that I want to talk about and not have other people interrupt me or try and turn the narrative around to what they want it to be. You probably just heard a card go past. You're also going to know that this is unfiltered or uncut and all of that stuff and raw, because I'm not cutting out the clip where the car goes past or a bird sings out. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully I'm talking loud enough for you guys. If you've stuck around and you've made it to this episode, I absolutely, truly appreciate every single thing. I hope that you're enjoying it. I've had so much amazing feedback. I've even had people say that they love the fact that, they put it on and they listen to it while they go to sleep, because it helps them with their ADHD, anxiety, or whatever's going on in their life. I could not be more happier. That I don't take that as, bad reviewing. I take that as an absolute amazing accomplishment, because I could think of nothing better than helping someone through their journey, which is what this page is about, or what all of my social media is about. My social media was started, as I said, I didn't start doing this to make somebody feel sorry for me. I don't need people to feel sorry for me for what I've been through or what I've done in life. I've dealt with that. I'm happy and I'm at peace with that. Yes, there's probably going to be a few little bits and pieces of this where I'm going to cry and I'm going to need to take a moment. But like I said, I will bring you along for that. And I try not to, unless I've had a really major, I'm not going to leave you sit for half an hour if I've gone and bawled my eyes out for half an hour through some of these things that I do talk about, because some of these things I haven't spoken out loud very often about, if at all. There was some moments of my life, I think I said in the last video, where I didn't actually talk about one topic of my life until I was in adulthood, and that was sexual assault. So there's going to be moments that this is probably just as much of a healing journey for me as hopefully it is for a lot of you guys. And hopefully, like I said, don't want you to feel sorry at all. I want you to understand why I am who I am, and hopefully my story can just help one person out there, because if it can help one person achieve one thing in life or make it through another day, everything I do is being fully worth it. So without further ado, shall we say, let's move on to what this topic of the podcast is about. So this podcast is about my sort of teen years. So we're sort of going to talk from about grade 8 through to grade 12-ish, maybe-ish. Or might go through a little bit further. We'll see how we go. So I was a shit of a kid at school. I was pretty good in primary school, as I did mention in a few little things. I was pretty good in primary school. I did lose my sister in grade 6. That was the end of grade 6, and it was quite daunting and scary, as you could imagine. Grade 7, I don't remember too much of, But obviously I was feeling a little bit of pain and hurt and everything, because probably the one thing I take with me from year 7 is that, I'd be sitting there talking to people. I sort of kept to myself once my sister passed. And there was this moment that, I would have people saying to me, don't frown, Farmer Brown. If you're in my lives and you see all of these frown lines, I can literally have people come through and go, Jesus, you've got a lot of wrinkles and whatnot's going on there. And it's like, yeah, I was quite upset a lot of my life, like I had a lot to deal with. And, I'm not saying I'm the only one, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it like I said either. It was shit. And I'd get a lot of people say, don't frown, Farmer Brown, which was my maiden name when I was growing up, was Brown. So that's why all my lines are there. But, upon that as well, there'd be moments I remember of, kids hitting me and stuff. And a lot of it, in a way, like you could probably think bullying, but I don't know if I see it that way. I know that probably sounds really strange, but like people would do it and it would make me feel better. Now I know that I assume some people out there, like if you're, a type of person who will cut yourself because you it makes you feel better. I'm not telling you it's the right thing to do. It's not. You please go and get help if that is you. Please do not be doing that. But for some reason, I must have been so numb that I actually, I'm going to use the word enjoyed. I know that probably sounds really strange, but that where, I'd be getting hit or whatever it was at school. It wasn't all the time. It wasn't every day, anything. It was just, there was just moments throughout that happened, and it does stick with me. But then I obviously headed into grade 8. My parents did buy the shop in, I think, because I'm pretty certain they brought it a year after my sister passed, so they must have brought it towards the end of year 7 or during year 7 or something there. No, because they did have it actually a year after her passing. I remember that they had it because the fridges, which were all freezers, shut down, and they walked out on the anniversary of her passing to all of the freezers in the shop had gone, so all ice cream was melted. And obviously it would have been a very hard day to deal with all of that for them. I don't exactly remember it, but I know my mum does mention that a little bit about the shop, on that anniversary, that they walked out and then they ended up turning that into a drink fridge instead. So at least that didn't happen again. Maybe it was just like a little bit of an electric moment with her or something. I don't know. It's quite crazy for that to happen, I think. But then obviously I went into grade 8. Grade 8 was quite different, It is for anyone, you're starting a new school, you're getting in with other crowds of kids that come from other schools around, and that, in saying that, there was literally a private school which I went to, and then there was the public school in the town. Excuse me. So there was 2 schools that would come together, and then as I have said, I grew up in Boggabilla, but I went to school in Gundawindi. So there was a lot of us kids, well, not a lot, but a few kids that came in from there, and then surrounding properties and stuff. So, it's when you start to gel together, as a lot of you guys would know, and you started to not just be the people that you went to school with, which is really exciting and scary for me to see how Little Miss deals with this, because Little Miss is heading into high school next year, and it's such a big eye-opener to come from a school where you know everyone to where there's all of these extra people that you have no idea who they are. So yeah, it's very daunting. And to be going through all of that hurt, like I said, that, I literally shut off from the world. I never really had a full group of friends. In saying that, I had friends. I had groups of friends, and I had probably a couple of different groups from my schooling area, but I did speak to everyone, so I just floated in a way. And I did sort of speak to everyone. I never had an issue with any kids in my class that I remember. But I did have a couple of closer groups that I did go and hang out with after school or stay at their places and things like that. But then I also had a group from the town Boggabilla where I grew up as well, where we'd go down and we'd go to the giant drop and swing off the remember the ropes and stuff, and swing into the river and just sit down and chill and chat and get away from the world for 5 minutes. So I did have my group of friends, and amongst those group of friends I did sort of different things in amongst them, but I don't really speak to any of those people. I actually don't speak to any of them. I did friend a few of them into Facebook for a little while, but then it's just who I am. I'm not a real people person. I'm a private people person. I like this sort of delving into stuff rather than face-to-face people person. It's hard to get out of that. But what did I get up to in my high school years? So, having that bit of a backstory there, one of my groups of friends, we used to smoke at school. We actually used to go and meet up at there was a little shop just up the road, not too far, literally right on the next corner, from the high school that I went to. And we'd all get there in the morning, and we'd all be standing out the front of that and be smoking, and you'd be like, how much, if you didn't have any, you'd be like, how much for a smoke? And be like 50 cents, and then I think it went up to $1. We did quite well on making our money off that stuff, because I think that they were only $15 for a packet of smokes, but yeah, we did quite well off them. So, that's what my morning would sort of look like. We'd all venture down there, and then we'd walk down to school and be set for the day. Obviously, lunch would come around, and we'd go down the back to the basketball court generally, and sit down there and smoke and everything during lunchtime. And that, obviously, you had someone who was a watch out, so because everybody, obviously all the teachers know where we do that. So if you're a kid and you're listening to this, which hopefully you're not, because but I do know that I have some people who are 16 and 17 and stuff who do listen to my stuff or watch me. Just note that they know, and you really shouldn't be doing that because it's naughty. And we didn't really know, we knew that it was bad, but it's not been since it's gone a lot, it's more lately that it's sort of becoming out more how bad it is for us, and I wish that I never had started. But in saying that, I did, and that's what we used to do. So then there was a couple of times that I'd go and sit out the front. It was called A block. So I'd sit out the front of there, and there was this one day that I lit up a smoke, and I'm sitting there just smoking it, and next minute I didn't realise that above us, because it was sort of too, it was high, above all of the smoke was wafting up, and the teacher up there was doing detention, and it was, Renee, get to the office. So I spent so much of my time at the office, it was ridiculous. We used to have sick bays in the office, but the sick bays were also isolation areas, where if you misbehaved too much, you'd get sent to the sick bay isolation area to do your schoolwork, so that you weren't annoying anybody else at school. I had to sit in there a fair bit, and I think a few of us did. We actually even ended up putting a hole. I don't think I actually ended up doing any of this, but there was a hole that went through the wall from people using their pens and stuff You remember on them movies where they like dig through? Yeah, we're sort of like that, and then we'd pass notes through the walls to each other, and yeah, because we had no one else to talk to, so we had to find something to do besides our schoolwork, because obviously we didn't want to do our schoolwork. But you know, so I spent a lot of my time doing that. I was forever on behaviour cards. Like I said, my, you know, high school years, they're not going to be interesting. Like, you know, they're probably going to be interesting, but you're not going to hear, I was a really good student, I got A+ grades, I did this. Especially from grade 8 to grade 10, you're not going to hear that. You're going to hear, I misbehaved. I tried to smoke smokes at school all the time. There was another time I grabbed a smoke and I was in science and I was playing with the Bunsen burners and everything, turning them on and off, and I thought that I'd turned it off. And I decided to light up a smoke in class, just being a shit of a kid. And I lit my textbooks and exercise books, my pencil case, absolutely everything up in flames. And yeah, obviously, to the opposite, I don't know how I did not get expelled for that. Actually, I think that might have been the time where I nearly got expelled. But I had a couple of amazing teachers as well who, actually the principal at the time, I think they could see through. I think that they knew how much I was hurting from everything, and, you know, and I know that that's not always, you know, you're not always going to have amazing people like that. But I do sit back and I do think about the moments where how amazing it was that I had. There'd probably be 3 teachers that really do sit really close with me even to this day, because without those 3 teachers, well, 2 teachers and 1 principal, realizing that there was more in me than what met the eye, I would have been expelled, and who knows how my life would have turned out, because that could have took me down a completely other path. Instead, they kept working with me, and they got me to the stage where in grade 11 I was put into, so we had younger, like, you know, for people who weren't so good at maths and English or misbehaving students, got put into the lower class in maths, and the same in English. And pretty much like some of the things that we did in maths was like, we went and made a sand pit for the like long jump area, which obviously is maths, because you got to measure out, you got to put your wood down, you got to fill up how much sand do you need. Like, obviously it was that, but it was a hands-on learning, which, you know, was really good, because by then I was starting to realize that I didn't want to keep misbehaving. I wanted to be, like, I knew that I'm a lot better at maths than I am at English. I think a lot of you realise that. I'm really shit speller, and I don't English very well. I do not speak properly, you know, I don't know a lot of things. I'm not the best at English, but, you know, I'm sure a lot of us, you know, we're generally good at one and not the other, and hats off to you if you are good at both. But I definitely wasn't. English is not my strong suit. I've also got dyslexia, which really struggles, especially with a lot of my reading and writing and stuff. But my maths, I am a lot, like, I'm pretty good at my maths. I reckon I could have been an accountant, because I love my maths. But, you know, in English, and that, obviously, like I said, I was in the younger, like the lower level. I worked my ass off in year 11, and I managed to get myself approved to then go into, so then there was Maths A, and I think there was like English and maybe a higher English, but most was just the next English up. So I got approved into the next English up, and I got approved into Maths A, and I think the other one was Maths B, or it might have been B and A, but I think I was in Maths A. And I did so well at, like, anyone that knows, in year 11 and 12, You learn a lot of what you need in year 12. This is how it was when I went to school. Don't know if it's still the same, but you learn a lot of what you need to know in year 12, in year 11, in English and Maths. And I think it might be for a lot of subjects, but definitely English and Maths. So because in year 11, I was not in that Maths class, I didn't learn all that stuff. I learned completely different stuff. So when it got to year 12, I needed to learn year 11 and year 12 in just year 12. Now, I was very proud to say that I passed English, but unfortunately, I was 1 mark. 1 mark. I remember not the principal, but the teacher, like I still remember his name and everything, and I remember him calling me in and being like, Renee, I've really tried so hard. I've gone over and over and over your piece of paper and everything so many times to try and find you this extra point to pass you, because, you know, obviously you don't want to fail a student in any class, but he couldn't find it to give it. So I did end up failing Maths. It hasn't really bothered me too much in life. I've never needed to go back and get anything with anything that I've wanted to do, which has been good. Must admit, that same said teacher who did that, he is one of the teachers who is definitely up there in one that tried to keep me around and got me to being able to graduate year 12. I'm very proud to sit here and say that I graduated year 12. No, looking back over my, you know, high school years and the trouble that I got into, the things that I did, you know, sitting down, like we'd have socials once a month at school, which was over at the community hall. You know, it was music, and there'd be a theme, you'd dress up for it, or you'd just come whatever you wanted, you know, and it'd go from said time to said time every single, like once a term. And they were so cool. I loved the socials, but, you know, I'd usually show up to them quite high. We'd be down the riverbank doing things that we shouldn't have been doing, and then going into them, which some lights would go a bit crazy, especially when you're younger, shall I just say. Anyway, moving on. But, you know, that's the child, like, that's what I did. And I had I remember my dad and mum, I think it might have been my mum maybe more so, mentioning this stuff to me, or, you know, saying it to me. But the deputy principal at the high school that I went to was actually my dad's best man at their wedding wife. So I remember constantly being told that, you know, do you know how embarrassing is a better word for that, but I can't think of it. It was to get the phone calls and everything from her saying, Renee's in trouble again, come pick Renee up. Like, I did get suspended a couple of times. I didn't do that too often, because as I said, with the parents are in the shop and there's a lot of book work in the shop, if I got suspended, like I did a couple of times, I had to go and actually, like, I didn't get to just sit down and do nothing. I actually had to go into the office and do filing and, you know, computer work, and be put into work into the shop. And yeah, I didn't just get to sit back and chill. You know, you might look back and go, oh Jesus, you know, like, did your parents not raise you? My parents raised me really well. We're actually talking about this on a live, and I had someone ask the question of, is my sister, so obviously I've got 3 sisters. One passed away, and my other sister, they said, is she like you? Well, I think they were saying both, but, you know, obviously I'll just talk about the one that's here, because I know a bit more about her as such with this part, because it sort of intervenes with my life. She was 3 years older than me, and we were both at high school for a bit of that time together. But yeah, they were like, are you and your sister similar in the way that we are? And I went, hell no. My sister is completely different to me. If you probably wouldn't even know she was my sister unless I showed it to you and told her. Because, obviously we have some similarities. We have the same parents. Yeah, maybe that's where it stops. Because there's, she's got an amazing job. She's done so well for herself. She's got, she's raised her children amazingly. She owns her own home, which is actually on a property. Her partner's a farmer. Yeah, she didn't really delve into half the stuff, if any of it, that I did. She behaved herself. She has accomplished a lot in her life. She, don't get me wrong, she probably would turn around and go, Ran, which is what she calls me. She probably had her moments as well. But she managed to keep a very close-knit group of friends that she still is quite close with to this day. So that was probably a benefit for her, where me, I didn't want people. I don't like people. Like, when I say I don't like people, I mean I shied away from everybody. I enjoyed my secluded little box. I had friends, as I said, but I preferred to, I didn't attach to that friendship. I held that friendship at a distance. I actually do that to this day in my actual marriage. We'll delve into that more on that topic, but it's the type of person that I am. I'm not somebody to, cling into people. I don't have that. My love language is cooking. It's not being affectionate and loving, and I wish I was more, I will say that, but I'm not. And I am who I am because of what has made me who I am. Trying to think if there's any other little fun things. I don't know how much we'll touch into these topics into the other area. Probably not. I've probably told you quite a lot over here in the free side, especially of my high school days, because they were they were fun, shall I say. Not without me sitting back and realizing that I made a lot of mistakes now that I'm older. Don't get me wrong. Obviously I look back and I go, holy moly, I got into a lot of things. I do want to make mention of this. I think this is an awesome little story of me and my sister and a bit of our differences. So there was this one time in band camp. No, I'm joking. There was this one day at school, and I can't remember what grade it was. I think it was I've got a feeling it was grade 9. It may have been 9 or 10. It was one of those two, because, hang on, 9, 10, 11, 12. It must have been grade 9, because that would have had my sister, because she would have been in grade 12. She's 3 years older than me. So, it must have been grade 9, and there was another kid that I was having a fight with. Could you imagine what her name was? It was Renee. So Renee and Renee against each other. And it had gotten out of the whole school that at lunchtime we were going for it. It was meeting point, whole works and jerks. You know what I mean, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I was getting myself down there, ready to go down there and all the rest. And anyway, as I've gotten halfway down, I noticed my sister standing down there, and I'm like, oh shit. This isn't good. This isn't good. What is going on? And she's talking to the other Renee. And I'm thinking, what's going on? So I've walked down there, and she's gone, you're not doing this, Ren. And I'm like, yes I am. I've organised to do it, like, little headstrong me. And she's gone, no, and she's saying to the other Renee, I know, quite a confusing story, both being Renee's. But yeah, she's saying to the other Renee, no, you're not taking my only sister. This is the only sister. She had this full-blown, blah, blah. Let's just say the fight didn't end up happening. I got sent away. I got spoken to from her over in another moment. And, yeah, in saying that, we made sure that there was another time and place made up, and we did actually have that fight. And I remember, can't remember if I ended up, I'm trying to remember now, I ended up with the black eye, or she ended up with the busting nose, or I ended up with the busted nose and she ended up with black eye. For some reason I feel like I had the nose, but yeah. It did end up eventuating, so she didn't get to stop that, but it does go to show that she was very different to me. She was more of a lover, not a fighter. She had particular roles at schools, and yeah, not things that poor Mama Sass over here would have, because it just wasn't me. There was another moment, as I was mentioning, that I don't know if anyone notices now. You're not going to, if you're on the video, on the audio of this podcast, you're not going to be able to see this, but you can come over to YouTube, exactly the same name, and see the video of this. But I do have on my arm a smiley face, which just showed on there. You may or may not have seen it on my TikTok videos and, my lives and that. That was sort of another time at school where I sort of mentioned about in year 7 about that hitting and everything. Like, I had this one kid at school that had a lighter in his hand, and he lit it up and just held it underneath the desk and then brought it up. And then he's gone, give you a smiley, Renee. And I'm like, sitting there sort of thing, like he lit it for a quick second, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And he put it on my arm. That is what that is from, if you've ever wondered. And it really puffed up, like obviously it was extremely hot. So, there's been moments throughout my time that, yeah, people will look at, well, she got bullied. I know that it probably looks that way, but I don't look at it that way, because I was a shit of a kid, and, I don't know if it's right or wrong to not look at that. If that had happened to my child these days, yeah, I would be classing that as bullying and taking it further. My parents probably didn't know about any of this sort of stuff, so, if they're listening to this, they're probably going, I didn't even know that stuff happened. Because like I said, I'd go home, I'd go into my room, I had PlayStation, I played games that I played, I listened to my music, Eminem and whatever. Well, it was more Tupac and that. I don't even think Eminem, no, can't remember now. Anyway, I'm sure hopefully you'll tell me in the comments, but there, obviously, as I grew up, it was Eminem and love 50 Cent and all that sort of stuff would be screaming out of my bedroom. And yeah, I just had my, what am I even trying to say? Taking a second, sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I brought you guys as much of my sort of schooling years that I can. Obviously, like I said, I just got into a lot of trouble. I used to go to, I didn't delve to an awful lot of parties, but, I did go to a lot. I tend to stay to myself, but, there was the times that I would go to a few, but I would be more going to friends' places and smoking things that I shouldn't have been smoking and doing that sort of stuff, rather than really heading out. Like, we sort of just chilled back at the house and everything. We didn't really, venture out parties. like a lot of other kids did. So yeah, that's what I did. I eventually, obviously, as I said, I did graduate year 12. That was amazing. I also did throughout that, which is quite interesting actually, because I did do my deb ball. I have mentioned this on my live before, and I was like, who did their deb ball? And yeah, a lot of people were sort of like, what's a deb ball? But it's where you wear like a white dress and do dance, and it's supposed to be like a coming of a pure female into an adult, which is quite funny, but yeah. With the stories that I've just told you. But yeah, I did do my deb. I graduated year 12. Went to the after party of year 12. Had an absolute ball. There's probably more stories I can bring. If I do think of them without it, delve more onto a piece of paper and that, there might be a couple of stories that are coming to my mind at the moment, but I'm sort of like, maybe them stories are better kept for behind closed doors. But yeah, finished year 12. Didn't really do too much. Worked at my parents' shop throughout that time as well, as I was growing up. And then came the time of, so obviously I finished school I was 17. And then I got with not my first partner, because I did have partners in school, but a partner that probably might be a little bit of an interesting story, because yeah, he was twice my age. So I was 18 and he was 36. So that's probably where we'll leave this chapter of Mama Sassa's life, and a little bit of a eye-opener into what the next chapter is going to be, and the fact that then it starts into my more adult ages. And I can guarantee you I didn't sneak into any pubs when I was younger, because I wasn't able to, because I'm too short. As we learnt, I think we're all learning, Mama Sass is a short ass. There was no way Mama Sass was sneaking into any pubs. So once I got to 18, I can explain more about that side of things. Hopefully you guys have made it through this part, like through the whole podcast. Hopefully you guys are absolutely loving it at the moment. Once again, please leave a comment. If you haven't already, did a star rating, especially over on Spotify, please leave a star rating. You can only leave one for the whole podcast, but please leave a star rating. I would much really appreciate it. And if you are on YouTube listening to these, feel free to leave a star rating in the comments. And if there's any questions that you want answered, feel free to ask. I don't mind what they are. Nothing's going to shock me. Hopefully you guys have learned that. Excuse me. Nothing's going to shock me about anything, I don't think. So please ask away your questions. If I get enough questions on this sort of part, maybe I'll make the next one a question and answered one, or maybe I might throw in a extra little freebie while I stuffed up the subscription area to Behind Closed Doors, and throw in another video this week of question answers of this sort of, up to Mama Sassa's 18th-ish lifestyle. So yeah, ask away. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Leave me a comment. If you don't have a question, leave me a comment to let me know what you are thinking about it. Maybe how you listen to this when you do. Like I said, I've had so many people tell me in my lives how they listen. But it's awesome over here to read the comments as well. As I said, yep, we're going to leave it like that. 10th or the 11th of April. Not too far away. We will be opening up the paid side of this, which is Behind Closed Doors. Thank you so much to everyone being patient with me stuffing that up. I do really appreciate it. You guys have an amazing rest of your day, night, whatever it is. I'm gonna love yous, I'm gonna leave yous, and look forward to the next Mama Sassa's Life Unfiltered podcast. Love yous all. Bye.